Hello and welcome to another episode of Pitstop Fracas. You're joined by me today, Chris. I'm here with a very special guest. But before I introduce the guest, I'd like to just, I know it's been a long time, so make sure to keep up. Now we're back. New season's about to begin. It's time to start making content. So make sure to, do some bit of housekeeping. Make sure to follow us on all socials at Pitstop Fracas on Instagram, Twitter/X, on YouTube, and whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Well, everywhere on the Pitstop Fracas. I am TikTok as well. So these are all the platforms. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, all of the good stuff. So we encourage you to make more content like this in the future. But today I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest. So if you are active on social communities, if you see projects like Driven by Us, you will see her face. She's well known and she's someone doing amazing stuff. I'm here by Miss Stephanie Alexander. How are you
Hey,
today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very, very well. So, Stephanie, you are a engineer and race marshal.
Correct.
Let's get a bit into your background behind it and what what kind of made you want to step into being an engineer and working in the motor industry.
So this is a this is always a funny story that when I tell it, and you'd never think that your grandmother taking you to church would be the reason why you end up going into a motorsport career, but that is my story. True fact. Um, My grandmother, God rest her soul, was a person that would not allow you to eat breakfast before church. So you had to eat when you got back. And just so happened that when I'd be eating breakfast would be the start of the F1 coverage. So, you're growing up, you're just watching it. And I actually started getting into it and I started like following the drivers and this was during the 98-99 season. So Mika Hakkinen was my driver back then.
Okay.
Um, and then I was following him. And then obviously we had the Ferrari Schumacher partnership years. So I was still following it, hoping anybody would beat the Ferrari, but that wasn't to be the case. Um, and then during that time, I was interested in the sport, I was following the sport, I was a fan, but there was nothing that sort of made me think actually it's a career I could do. And 2007 came around and everything changed, and um, it that was it. The first time I saw Sir Lewis Hamilton, trackside Australia 2007, I was like, okay, there's a guy that looks like me. Maybe I can do it. And it was quite late by that point. I think I'd already chosen my A levels, and traditionally for engineering, you have to have physics, maths, A levels, and I did none of them. Um, I did physical education, drama, product design, and psychology as my A levels. So four A levels that were nowhere near engineering. And yeah, it just took me through. Um, Went to a university that really saw my potential and were happy for me to do the degree program, and I ended up doing a degree in motorsport.
Oh, that's very, very interesting because as someone who can relate a little bit with church and Formula One being my Sundays, um, it's something that I truly do get. As someone a little younger, because I came in at the end of the Schumacher era, so that was like my starting point where I was like, I saw red cars and winning, and I said, sign me up. And then seeing, because obviously in my ignorance, I was like, I want to be the first black person to first black driver to make it, yada yada yada. Then suddenly, like a couple of years later, I see Lewis turn up. I'm like, you know what? He's living my dream. Fair enough. I support this. It's like if I can't make it, at least someone's doing it. Like I would never blame a person for living my dreams. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's something that I always thought, because as someone who always thought when I was younger, thought, I want to work in motorsport, I want to do it, but never around to do it. I was always someone who wants to platform and support people who have made it in any capacity because it's amazing. You know, people, no matter what work you do, it's like serious stuff and it's quite amazing. I have to give my highest respects. Then let's move on a bit onto the marshalling side where you decided to, start volunteering. What was the background behind that? And when did you kind of think, oh, yeah, I want to try this, I want to do this?
So basically, the way that came about was after my degree and while I was working full time, on and off, I would do projects with race teams and things like that. And I had to stop doing it because my full time job meant I was traveling a lot around the world and I couldn't keep both up. And post COVID, I just got to a point where I was like, you know what, I want to get back into motorsport. There's there's something about it that sort of, that smell of petrol, that first time of the day. You can't beat that feeling. So somebody suggested to me, oh, why don't you become a marshal? And I was like, well, I kind of know what they do, but I don't know what they do. So I signed myself up for like a pre-taster session sort of information discussion, and immediately I was asking questions about just what marshals do in general. And the guy that was running the meeting said, "You don't even need a taster session. Just get on the track and don't waste our time." And I was like, "Well, that's it. It must be a sign." And the first time I stepped on the track as a marshal in Orange in April 2022, and I haven't looked back. I've been doing it for this will be my fourth full year, and I've just had so much fun doing it. It's really, really fun activity.
Oh, makes sense, makes sense. I didn't. Something that's interesting is something as far as marshalling has gone, I've only ever done it on a go-karting track part time, but it's something that, seeing you guys there and like when you attend races and you see you guys there and you're doing like a lot more than I think people. It's one of those things that you're like the unsung heroes of the event. So something that, I have to really respect and, be like, oh yeah, this is something that I can really go to. But okay, let's speak a bit more about the engineering side because obviously, like as someone who does it and someone who is involved in communities that share the word about engineering and about people of color being in engineering, how how do you find it? And have you noticed like as times progressed, things changing within the game of engineering in terms of people who look like us, more and more of us appearing?
Yeah, I would say in a positive direction for sure. When I did my degree, I was one of two women, um, and I was one of a few people of color in my class. And I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but actuality, looking back, it was pretty stark contrast to what um you were kind of expecting. Going
Mhm.
to uni, you're expecting it to be like a lot of different people, but it just seemed like a lot of the degrees were still very much a certain demographic. And I went into industry again. A lot of times I've been either the only person of color in the room, I've been the only woman in the room. So it was something to get used to, but now actually seeing young people come through, I'm always trying to make sure that, you know, that I see them and I acknowledge them because I know how hard it was and in the early stages of my career, that I want them to know that they matter and that they can do whatever they set their mind to in this space as well.
Of course, that's very valid and makes sense. What okay, what would you say would be like the your favorite parts of it, and would you say was the biggest hurdles, if you don't mind sharing?
Um, s- my favorite parts, quite simply, is just due to some of the projects I've worked on. Like I've worked on stuff that's on the road right now. It's um, buses, tractors, cars. I've worked on it all, and I see my stuff on the road all the time, and you know, you can't shout every time you see it. Oh yeah, that's me. But you know,
Yeah.
I know that's me. So I'm like, yes, thank you very much. Um, and being part of the process to make these products is a really, really cool process. I'd say one of the most difficult bits, and this is a story I always tell from the very beginning of my career, which was the first test trip I ever went on. So, in the automotive space, you usually go on a hot climate test trip and a cold climate test trip. The reason why that is because cars actually have a span of temperatures that they're supposed to work within. You know, most people never read the manual to check what they are, but we have to test for that and actually say, you know, if we're saying it's in the handbook, we can actually prove that that's what's happening. So I went on a hot climate test trip um, very early on, and it was all men apart from me, and they had put out one porter cabin for me in 40 plus degree heat.
Ooh,
And, you know, so the man them can go pee wherever they want to pee,
yeah.
but I can only really pee in the porter cabin. But then if you need to do other things, everybody's using the porter cabin and it's roasting in 40-degree heat. And oh, I held my bladder. I ain't gonna lie to you, I held my bladder every day. How I did not come away ill, I don't understand. But the whole like from the time I left the hotel to the time I got back to the hotel, I drank just enough water to keep me hydrated, but not too much that I needed the loo. And I said from then on, if I ever go on a test trip or anything like that, I make sure of the toilet facilities before I go, just to make sure that that's taken care of. Because that's, you know, it's you don't realize how important it is until you're actually in that position.
I completely understand. It's fun, man. All I can say is, you know, as we're looping back, those times Granny took you to church, blessed you, and said, "Not this time. We'll make it through this time." But yeah, that's one thing. That's one of those things where someone listening to this today can be like, "Okay, note it." Future, if I'm ever in that situation and it's hot, make sure the facilities are well prepped and fair, so we're not suffering in 40-degree heat.
Yeah, yeah. I say in other tests that I've been on, both hot and cold, it is better for sure. I think we were just caught out on that test just because of the way that it was planned. But yeah, you gotta make sure you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
be prepared for any curveballs. And yeah, that was just one of the biggest ones of them all.
no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, I actually don't have any more questions on this side, but because I don't have any more questions on this, we can switch over to the marshalling side,
Mm.
and then again, what would you say were what are your favorite parts, and what's your least favorite parts about the role?
There are quite a few favourite parts of marshalling, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I said, the smell of petrol first thing in the morning when the cars are setting off, love it. The people that you meet along the way, you get to meet so many people that you wouldn't necessarily meet in your day-to-days, and they're all fans of just watching racing. So you can talk cars, engines, whatever you wanna do all day, and they're not gonna think of you as weird or strange because 'cause they're there for the same purpose. So, yeah, I've met young people that are, you know, 15, 16, all the way up to people that are in their 70s and 80s still doing this. So it is so, 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 so cool to do that. I've been blessed that I've been able to do F1 races, that I've been able to go overseas to do F1 races, and meeting people across the world that come and do this as well is really, really exciting and really good. um, I'd say tongue in cheek, the biggest drawback is the early starts. For most race weekends, you are there signing in at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that means in some cases I'm leaving my house 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get to the track for 7, to sign up, to start at 8, to go through till 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It's long, they're long days. Most of the time you do get fed and watered as well. So I'm not going to be
Okay.
mad at that. But it's just you know, it's 5:30 in the morning, you crack your eye open and you're like, I gotta get to the track. So that's one of the major drawbacks for me. And then I think it's not the other drawback is not necessarily for me, but I think as a whole, as a community, is it's about getting to tracks in general. We're lucky that we have quite a few racetracks in the UK, but none of them are near any form of transport. So, let's say I didn't have a car and I wanted to go and visit Silverstone for the day. The nearest station is 45 minutes away from Silverstone. So
Oh,
how much is that going to, after you get the train to the nearest station, how much is it going to be in taxi costs to get there and back? It's things like that. And I speak to people all the time about marshalling, and you can see the interest, and then you can see it in their head going, but how am I going to get there? And it's not just for marshalling, it's for fans as well. It's something that's quite prohibitive in some cases. Going to a race outside of F1 can actually be quite cheap. I know of some
mm.
race weekends where you can turn up on the Sunday to watch a full day's racing and it will cost you 25 quid for the whole day. That's compared to the price of an F1 ticket, that's super cheap. But then if you factor in the travel, how much are you paying if you don't have a car or a way of getting there? So I think it's something that definitely needs to be looked into.
No, that makes sense. So I always assumed that you guys would have had like a at least for, let's say, the volunteers, like you'd have like if people do not have cars, there'd be like a dedicated meeting point where you'd be like maybe busting or anything. No, it's you make your own way in.
For a lot of the, let's say national, when I say national, I
Mm.
mean UK races, you are getting there on your own accord. It's starting to be a thing that marshals are offering lifts to people, and they're always willing to offer lifts to people and give that support. But it's not something that's automatic, let's say. For the international races, it's slightly different, depending on which race you've been to. So I've done 3. I've done Las Vegas, I've done Miami, and I've done here at Silverstone. Silverstone is, I actually camped there, so there was, the transportation was my 2 feet from my
Yeah.
tent to my post. So that wasn't an issue. But for the other 2 races I did in the States, we were bussed there because all the marshals met at the Marshall meetup point, and then we were all bussed from there to our respective places on the track. So it very much varies on if you're doing a national and international, and then where you are in that sense.
Okay, that makes sense. And one question I'd have to ask is, where was your favorite place to do it? What's been your favorite, event and track to do marshalling?
Well, I have a big soft spot for Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch is what I consider my home circuit. It's actually only about half an hour from where I was born and grew up. And I didn't know that I could access that circuit at any time. I thought it was just you had to be like one of the big members of the team or whatever. They never advertised back in the day about, you could just turn up and watch racing for the day type thing. I wasn't in the know on that. Otherwise, I'd have been going from like 13, 14, 15 years old. But yeah, I love going there. The track is so different. There's a lot of uphill, downhill sections. If the GP loop's open at the back, you really get to go through the woods and see the GP loop, which is awesome. you know, the amount of different cars that come in. We're talking about pre-1930 war cars all the way through to, you know, modern GTs race there. So you get to see a whole bunch of stuff. Absolutely top rate track. And then I can't choose from any of my internationals because they all had different experiences that I absolutely loved and enjoyed. So I can't choose.
Okay, because I obviously before, like I said before, one thing because I've been watching your content online, and I will before we wrap, I'll make sure that you promote where people can find you. You posted one of the stories about how much it cost you to go to Las Vegas. Do you mind sharing with the people how much it costs to be a marshal in Las Vegas?
Yeah. I have to remember the exact figure now. Because it's that cost was sans holiday cost, let's say. So I did
Mm,
it as a combined holiday, and because my birthday was in that week as well, I did it
wow.
as a combined trip to, you know, celebrate my birthday, because how often do you get to celebrate your birthday in Las Vegas, and to actually be at the race. So I believe the cost I put down was about £1,700 for Las Vegas. There will be a part two to the series coming up soon, because I have broken down the Miami costs as well. So
Oh.
I will be putting that out soon. Um, but yeah, even though that's the figure, when you include the holiday side of it, it did go past the 2K mark. Easy, light work. It was, yeah. And that's money you're not getting back because you are considered a volunteer, and if you're volunteering your time, you're not getting reimbursed for a lot of the cost that you're putting in to go. So that that cost included my flights, my hotels, food and drink while I was there, pre-trip,
Mm,
not pre-trip, pre-race, because
yeah.
we were fed during the race weekend, and any other sort of expenditures outside of that as well. Um, but yeah, it's not cheap to do these type of races, and I know I'm very lucky to be in a position that I can afford to do that. Um, and I'm planning, potentially, fingers crossed, to do 4 races this year. Um, we'll see, but yeah, I've already taken that into my budget. Like, you know, I'm going to lose some money. There's going to be some money disappearing out my account to go racing. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. As you know, someone who's attended races, we know it's expensive, especially getting a hotel. You look at the prices, and we all know they hike up the prices and go, "Oh Lord, have mercy." I learned that the hard way last year, and it's one of those things where we have to just be honest, because it's one thing I think it's important to know that you guys are sacrificing your time and your money to be there to make sure that these events run safely and properly, and you guys are doing this as enthusiasts, and something that it should be shared to the world, and it's something that if you want to get involved, we've got to take it seriously.
Yeah,
uh,
you know, I would say, especially from that point of view, a lot of people just think, oh, we're just there to be close to trackside. No, we're there for the safety aspect. We're there to actually be responsible for the safety of drivers if they were in the unfortunate situation to crash or sort of break down at the side of the road. That's what we're there to do. So yes, we can see the racing, but half the time we can't even really pay attention to it because we have to be alert for if a crash is happening. So, for instance, in Miami last year, um, I didn't actually realize until I saw the race back when I got in the UK that Carlos Sainz actually span directly to the left of me in my eye line, um, in one of his practice runs, but I did not see it because I was so focused on my section of the track, which was the next turn. So I was looking down to make sure that all the cars were following that turn correctly and going through. And it was only afterwards everyone was like, "Oh, did you not see Science spin?" I was like, "Who? What?" Because I was that locked in. So you have to, yeah. It's much more than just sitting there watching a race.
No, that makes sense. And okay, because I always wanted to ask, like, if when someone like spins or crashes in your periphery, like, how quick are you to notice? Because it's like, say, if you didn't notice the spin that went like next to you, is it just that because you just focus on your particular corner, or is that until someone makes like a noise or something that you sit there and go, okay, what was that? Or
No, it was more because so every Marshal post is like a section to section. So you're sort of figuring out where your Marshal post really begins, and you'll agree with the post before, where your section of the track begins and where your section of the track ends. So where, even though yes, Science span in the area that I was in, he was not within my responsibility. So I didn't have to act or react in any type of way, hence why I didn't do anything. Um, but then when you do have something that happens in your area, you're pretty much already ready to go. In my case, I'm a flagger,
Mhm.
so I would be there ready with the correct flag to denote what the situation is. If it's a slow moving vehicle, if it's a yellow flag, double yellows, all of that, I have to be ready to throw it out immediately. And we had a funny one in the Porsche race where we had a spin, one of the Porsches span, and um, our there's more than one flagger on the post, and you're responsible for different flags. So the other flagger was in a box that's literally, you sort of get like a gap in the fence that's about shoulder width, if not slightly more than that apart. So I had to drag him out of the area, the opening, so that I could get in there to wave my yellow flag to say, oh, there's an incident, please watch out, please watch out. And then as soon as all the other cars passed and we were just left with the car that span, he had to drag me back out so that he could put his flag back in to say that it's a slow moving vehicle until the car restarted and went off. So you have to trust in your team that, you know, I knew it wasn't a sign of disrespect that he was yanking me out the way to do what he needed to do. He knew it wasn't a sign of disrespect that I was yanking him out the way to do what he needed to do. But we had that agreement that we were going to do that in the case of an incident such as that. And you would agree that with your team before you start the race weekend.
Okay, so there's more than one flagger in the post.
Yeah, so generally you would have at every post you would have a post chief, you would have a radio operator, you
Mhm.
would have what's called the TSP board, which are the light boards that you sometimes see on the side. They control that, and then you'd have at least p- in a good case you'd have at least two flaggers after that, and they are responsible for the rest of the flags thereafter. So yes, you have a light board, but in case the light board fails, you always have the backup of the flags there too.
Okay. What would you say is your favorite role out of them if you've done them all?
Um, I've I have done them all, but actually I prefer in the UK I do pit lane and assembly. And what that is literally as the cars are in the pits, anything that happens in the pit lane, I'm supporting with. If it's getting drivers to the right place or if it's taking care of incidents that happen in the pit lane, we're working on that. And then assembly is the pre-gridding of cars. So if you've got cars that have come from the paddock ends that aren't in the pit lane, you're responsible for them. You're responsible for making sure they go out for their practice sessions, and you're also responsible for getting them in the right order for when they go for their races as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into that again. And you could be in a team of two people, you can be in a team of 15 people, and you're just figuring out how to make it work every race. On average, a race weekend, you could have at least 15 races over the weekend. So you've got to be really with it.
Oh, that makes sense. It's one thing where, because obviously when you see some races where they're not in the pit lane or they're hidden way out the back, you think, how do they make their way over? Like, you see them drive the way through, but it's like, how do they? But now it makes sense, where you guys are pointing them the right direction. So,
Yeah.
and then you guys are kind of figuring out on the fly as well as these things happening.
Correct. So for instance, if we go into the F1 last year, the F2, F3, and F4 cars were at the national pit straight, which used to be the start finish line of Silverstone. So they were all parked there, and then obviously the F1 cars were in the international pit straight. But if the F2, F3, F4 cars needed to go to their race, obviously they need to still get around the track. So they had to be released on time out of their pit lane to go across, and then you've got to get their team over, but their team can't go on the track to go. And there's a whole load of moving parts that go into a race weekend. And yeah, there's loads of things that you can do.
Okay. That makes a lot. That makes a lot of sense, and it's something that hopefully people listening are learning something and understanding. Because if was there anything else in terms of marching that you'd want people to know, like little roles or little things that you'd want people to know or find out, because that's a bit different and unique to something that's not really told to the public normally.
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact that you don't have to be like studying engineering or anything to be a marshal. You can come from all walks of life. To sign up is very easy. You just go on your respective motorsport governing body's website and figure out how to sign up. From a UK perspective, once you sign up, you can remain a marshal as long as you do a minimum of 2 days a year. So that's one race weekend a year to
Okay.
be able to have and keep a license. Doesn't it's quite a nice thing to give maybe a couple of days of your time a year just to support grassroots racing, because people from all walks of life like to have that opportunity to race, even the ones that just arrive and drive. So to be able to facilitate that and support that is really good.
Because I was actually the next part I was going to say, if, how people to get involved and what's the progression like between you going from grassroots and up to
Yeah.
whether it's endurance or Formula or GT racing.
So basically, from a UK perspective, I'm speaking from a UK perspective here. It is
Mhm.
different country to country, but from a UK perspective here, basically, as soon as you sign up as a marshal, you can marshal most days that are not Formula One. So you can marshal the GTs, the endurance, truck series, bikes, karting, hill climbs, rallies. You can take part in that immediately. And through that, if you do a minimum of 15 days over 2 years, then you can sit an exam to basically show your experience, and then you progress through the levels of marshalling that way. And there are 5 different avenues in the UK that you can progress through. So it's race on track, which is intervention and flagging, race off track, which is pit lane and assembly. You have speed, which is sort of like the drag race type areas.
Mhm.
You have karting, and then you have rally. So yeah,
Mhm.
so that's pretty much how you progress. But you are not allowed to do Formula One races until you have a grade of some sort,
Mhm.
in either race on track or race off track. So I had to do my exam in 2024. I was literally on the wire to if I was going to be able to get my exam done in time before I put in my Vegas application. But I had to do my exam and pass it before I could actually apply for Vegas.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, guys, if you're interested, there's no shortcuts. You got to put in the work. You got,
Yes.
support the grassroots and, be there. There's no shortcuts. There's no, I didn't want to spend money on Silverstone, so I'm going to get in, sneak in this way.
No, you've got
It's
you've got to put in the time. And the thing is, for every year that you apply to a new race, you have to still have put in the time in between. So just because I did Silverstone last year does not mean I'm guaranteed to do Silverstone this year. I have to do a minimum of so many days between the last race and this race to be considered. So yeah, so it means you got to keep up your days. You got to keep up that time and keep putting in that energy to be considered.
That makes sense. And okay, was there anything else in terms of, getting involved that you wanted to share or wanted to, just put it out there in the open in terms of like, how you feel? Because obviously when you're going around sharing this information, was there anything that you get commonly asked and go, "Oh, how does this work or that work?" that you think that should just be open to the world?
I think a lot of people are surprised that young people are interested in motorsport in the way that they want to get involved more than just watching it, which is fine. I love being just a fan of the sport even. I I give massive props and respects to the fans because they're really paying attention to how this sport is moving. Um, but you can take it further than being a fan if you so wish to. There's nothing stopping you from having that opportunity to do that. And I really do hope that we have more young people that want to take up things like marshalling and officiating and scrutineering, because unfortunately we do have a situation in the UK where we do have more of an older generation taking part. Um, Mostly because they do have more time and, they do have a bit more disposable income in some cases. But if we don't replenish those numbers with younger people, eventually we will get to a critical stage where will we still be able to have racing if we don't have marshals trackside? And unfortunately, we've seen instances last year where marshals weren't trackside or there weren't enough marshals trackside, and we unfortunately have had some big incidents. In most cases, people have come away unhurt, but we did. It is really about the safety of everybody involved, from the marshals to the riders, the drivers, and making sure that we all turn up on at the beginning of the day and we all go home at the end of the day in one piece.
Of course, of course. Okay, let's do something a little more lighthearted. Do you have any fun stories to tell, or anything where you sit down and go, "Oh, this was something. This is something where you went and were like, oh my god, how did I handle this situation?" Or I was overwhelmed, or that was incredible seeing what happened.
I've got a great story from Vegas actually. So the first day we went out to track in Vegas, um, because we do an extra day out there just to acclimatize to the track before it goes into the night race aspect. Um, the first day we were traveling about 4 blocks from the hotel to the track, so it wasn't very far at all, but it took us over 1.5 hours to make that journey because it was absolutely gridlocked with people trying to drop their friends off at the track or trying to drop their family off at the track or just trying to take a glimpse or just passing through because the whole strip's shut, so they can't get to where they want to get to. And we were sitting there like, are we actually going to make it on time for the first practice session? Because we're not there. Like, if we're not there, what is going to happen when the international broadcast goes up and you're expecting to see FP1 and they're like, sorry folks, the marshals haven't turned up yet? Oh my god, we were cutting it close. But eventually the Las Vegas police realized that we were stuck, and managed to clear the way for us that day. The next day all the marshals came out again and we're like, oh, we're going to have some trouble again. Clear skies. Like the roads were pre-cleared by Popo. We were just breezing through. I was like, yes, this is the life we should be living. But then I realized that if you wasn't understanding of the F1 weekend, obviously for some people in the US, an orange suit looks like a prison jumpsuit. So I was like, do you know what we're actually there to do? Do you think they're just do you understand that we're marshals actually trying to do a job? It was funny having those type of discussions with people sometimes as well. But generally most people recognize we were marshals and we were there to do a job. So that was pretty cool. So that was one of my great stories on that side. And then from a UK point of view, um I remember I turned up for a race weekend, one weekend a couple of years ago, and I turned up and they're like, just to let you know, we don't have many people in the pit lane. And I was like, okay, cool. Thinking there'd be like maybe 4 or 5. They're like, no, there's only 2 of you. Say what? They're like,
Oh
yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah, there's only 2 of you. I'm like, there's 30 something cars and there's 2 of us. They're like, yeah, 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 there's 2 of you, there's 2 of you. So we're like, I was like, okay, cool, 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 cool. In my head, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? What have I got to sort out? What can I leave? What can I keep? What is actually ultimately important? What has to sort of we figure out some type of answer? And luckily, a lot of the people trackside are so supportive, and they knew that I was still young in my martial career, as well. So everybody was scrabbling trackside to be like, oh, could you come off your post to help out when they're trying to grid up the cars? Can you do this? Can you do that? So we ended up having one of the stewards who also marshals as well. She came down to trackside when the cars were being gridded up. We had another marshal from another side of the track come across when the cars were being gridded up. I was in the assembly area pre-gridding the cars with the race coordinator, so their series coordinator, and then as soon as like the last 5 cars were coming, I'd leave it with the series coordinator and leg it back across the track to with the other person that I was working with to be ready to grid up these cars, and I'm having to be like, okay, where's these cars coming in? Boom, 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 boom. Let's get them going. Let's get them going. You got, let's say, from the time assembly comes out they're being released to go to the grid, you've got maybe 5 minutes max to get all these cars in the right position, and we're talking maybe I think it was 32 cars that day,
Oh
and
god.
we got 2 that I borrowed, and the 2 of us that were there, and it was absolutely insane. One of the best times ever though, because I really did enjoy sort of the frenzy of it, but it was also terrifying because I was like, what happens if I get this wrong? Is the racing not gonna happen? Is something gonna go wrong? But luckily everything went pretty well. No real issues. I can't I think a few drivers may have crashed, but they weren't my fault. So
Yeah.
that's ain't nothing to do with me. Once they pass the start finish line, I've done my job.
No, that makes sense. Actually, I have to ask a question because obviously, you said they feed you. Did they feed you well, or is it just feeding you? Just like,
It it very much depends on the what's available per series per track. So I've been to multiple tracks, and in some cases they've given you like a full day's worth of food, so like sort of sandwiches, a snack and a drink. In some cases they've given you breakfast. So it's very much it's a hit and miss as to what you're going to get. So I always take a lunch anyway, and then if I'm supplied a lunch, then that's even better. But at least I have a lunch that if it's not there, I can still eat something because obviously it's a long day. And the one thing is though, if racing goes behind schedule, the first thing to go is the marshal's lunch. So there's been times I've literally had to stuff my face between race sessions and be like, okay, the racing's going. I've got 15 minutes. Get as much food down me before the next cars come out to come to the track in 15 minutes time. Because in the UK more so, we have a time that racing has to finish by because of noise restraints.
of
So
course.
yeah, so we can't just say, oh, we're delayed, we're going to keep going to X. No, we have to stop by this time. So all the racing has to fit in within this time. That may mean racings get shortened, that may mean races get cancelled, but racing has to finish by X time.
No, that makes sense. Actually, one last question, because if there's like let's say when the session is done or something or things over, are you would you call yourself quite professional and be like, I'm not taking pictures of any smashed cars or taking pictures of any drivers who's they say their engine's blown up. Not if they've had a crash, crash, let's be
Yeah.
sensible. But if there's engines blown up, and would you be like, oh, you having a chat with them, or you just kind of like leave them be, leave it all be, and just get on with things?
It kind of depends. So in most cases, you're not really allowed your phone
Mm,
trackside anyway because of it can be a distraction for safety reasons. But at the same time, I also respect the fact that if there is a crash or something, I'm not trying to take photos of it or trying to take photos
yeah,
with the drivers in that sense. So I will be pleasant to the drivers. I'll be in conversation with the drivers, but I will keep a level of professional aspect of it. That if a driver says, "Oh, do you mind?" or "You can have a photo with me if you so choose," then I'll be like, "Hell yeah!" Like you'll see on my Instagram that I do have photos with a few drivers because they've been gracious enough to say, "Oh, you can take a photo with me," rather than me asking, "Can I get a photo with you?" So
yeah.
um, it is that case. But yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes you really just you see something and you really want to be like, oh, I want to get no. I have to keep my phone in my pocket the whole time, and I've missed some I've seen some cracking stuff that I can't actually like ever take a photo of, which is a shame. But yeah, I have to. I generally try and keep it professional.
Of course, that makes sense. And I don't want to keep too much of your time, so I'm gonna ask. So where can people find you online? Where do people find you if they want to reach out and ask, questions that I failed to ask, or follow your journey in terms of marshalling and find out more information about, for example, the upcoming Miami breakdown, or which of the 4 races that you're planning to attend this year, if, God willing, you're able to attend all 4. Where can people find you?
So people can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Steph.motorsport for both pages. I generally post a lot of content about my Marshall life on there, and some of the things that I do just in a motorsport capacity in general. For instance, I was very lucky to have met Mika Hakkinen last year, so you will find a photo of me and Mika on my Instagram. It's like my top photo because I cry. I cried after I met him. I kid you not. I was literally sitting there like because it was just so emotional as a full circle moment. So yeah, if you want to just follow my journey, see what I do at Steph.motorsport on all platforms.
No, we'll have it written in the link in the bio of this episode, and I will Ben I post all this up. So make sure to follow Steph, because because obviously I'm very grateful for her time and very thankful. And as you see, she's a very big Mick Hakkinen stan, and you know what, I respect it. There's members of the cast who are also big Hakkinen stans, so I'm sure they will be very happy to hear that as well. And I actually got a question. So obviously, in let's say current F1, would you say you're a fan currently as well now?
I am a fan, but I'm a fan more now of the crop of drivers in general. I will say, yes, I do still have a soft spot for Sir Lewis. Yes, I do still have a soft spot for McLaren in my heart at all times because McLaren was like my go-to team for all the time I've been watching racing. But I do enjoy just watching the series more as a whole now rather than just supporting a set driver. I think just because racing has just got so much more exciting in the last few seasons. It was anybody's bag. It was anybody's chance to win it.
Mhm.
So I really just want to show support as a whole.
No, that makes sense. I'm still convinced that the McLaren fan TV boys will be very happy to hear that you still have a soft spot for McLaren. They'll be
All
like,
day,
yeah.
all day. Like last year, I wore. to the Miami race. There's a picture of me wearing my first ever McLaren t-shirt that was brought for me to Miami. So you'll actually
Ah,
see me standing outside Lewis's garage with a McLaren, with his first McLaren t-shirt. So yeah,
oh,
I'm not new to the game. I'm true to the game. Okay, I've been around a while.
no, no, you've been here. Don't worry. You speak to me. I'm like a, even though I'm not even the other side of 30 yet, I live my life like an old head. I just am someone that, historian and loves the game. So it's something that
Yeah,
I really, really do respect. So once again, some housekeeping, make sure. Wait, once again, I want to say thank you for your time. It's been greatly appreciated. And hopefully listeners do follow you and get to see all the great things you're up to. And once again, for all listeners to make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to follow us both on Instagram, whether it's Pitstop Fracas for me or Steph.motorsport for Stephanie. And, thanks again for listening. I hope you have a nice evening and peace.
thank you very much.